A strange voice kept calling me from the trees. I should have known something was wrong the moment the trail went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Like something had flipped a switch and sucked all the background noise out of the forest. No birds, no bugs, not even the distant groan of trees swaying in the wind. Just me. My boots crunching dead pine needles. The faint hiss of my breath through the fleece neck gaiter I'd pulled up because the wind had started nipping harder around mile 5. I was deep in the sawtooths, Idaho, late fall. I came out here to be alone, my idea of a reset. Work was burning me out. I was eating garbage, drinking too much, and wasting hours doom-scrolling TikTok in bed. A buddy of mine swore by solo camping, said you come back feeling like a different person, so I planned a 3-night solo trip. No phone, just a printed map, a compass, and my Garmin in reach for emergencies. The trailhead had a small gravel lot and 2 other cars when I got there. A beat-up Subaru and a white Tacoma with Oregon plates. I remember thinking the Tacoma was the only clean thing in that lot. I took a piss behind a stump, signed into the logbook with my full name, date, and destination, Arrow Lake, then set off into the pines. First couple hours were fine, cold but beautiful. I had my REI pack loaded with dehydrated meals, 2 Nalgene's, a Jetboil, and a knife I barely knew how to use. The trees were gold and orange. The sun kept blinking through them in long, soft beams. It felt good, like I'd made the right call. That feeling didn't last. About 6 miles in, things changed. There was this spot where the trail splits, left down to the lake, right up toward a ridge that overlooks the water. I took the ridge, thinking I'd camp where I could see everything below. I'd read somewhere that predators rarely come uphill unless they're hunting. It made me feel smart, safe. But about 20 minutes up that ridge, the sounds stopped. Just gone. I stopped walking, listening. Thought maybe there was a bear nearby, or a cougar. I kept my hand on the bear spray, scanning the woods. Nothing. But something felt off, like I was being watched. I didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, but my body, it knew. My skin got tight, like every hair was yanking upward. My chest felt hollow. I kept moving, faster now, telling myself I was being stupid. I made camp on a flat patch overlooking the lake, maybe 200 feet below. I set up my tent, a cheap grey one from Costco that leaked if you looked at it wrong. Boiled some water for dinner, and sat with my back to a big dead log, watching the trees. The wind picked up a little as the sun dipped, making that distant howling sound I've always found kinda peaceful. But that night, it didn't feel peaceful. It sounded like something screaming far away. I ate my Mountain House chili mac, brushed my teeth with bottled water, then packed everything that smelled into a dry bag and hung it from a branch maybe 15 feet off the ground. Bear protocol, all by the book. But I kept looking behind me, like I expected to see someone standing at the edge of the trees. I crawled into my tent around 9, zipped up tight in my sleeping bag, and just lay there. I wasn't tired. I was wired, listening. At some point I must have fallen asleep, but I woke up maybe 2 hours later to the sound of footsteps. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. I sat up, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd puke. My hand shot out for the flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. I just held it, frozen. The footsteps weren't coming from the trail. They were coming from the ridge, behind me, from the woods, the steep, overgrown part where there wasn't a path. I waited, holding my breath. Then it stopped. Silence again, except my heart in my ears. I stayed like that for maybe 30 minutes. Eventually, I convinced myself it was an animal. A deer, elk, something harmless. I laid back down, eyes wide open, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Then I heard it. A voice. Not loud, not close. Just this hoarse whisper floating down through the trees. Hey. I froze. Another second passed. Then, again, just a little closer. Hey, you awake? I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The voice was wrong. It wasn't friendly or worried or playful. It sounded deliberate, like someone pretending to be casual, trying too hard to sound human. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It bounced around the trees like wind. Then a few minutes later, I can see your tent. My stomach dropped. I reached for the knife, slowly, making no sound. The bear spray was in my pack outside, useless to me now. There was a long pause. Then I heard footsteps again. Not walking away, not approaching, circling. I laid there for what felt like hours, heart jackhammering, until finally, silence. Nothing. Eventually, the grey light of dawn started to bleed through the nylon walls of my tent. I must have passed out sitting up. I opened the flap as soon as it was light enough, crawling out with the knife clutched in my hand. And what I saw made me feel like I was still in a dream. There were footprints, all around my tent. Not boot prints, not barefoot either, just dirty, treadless, shallow impressions. And next to one of them, right near the log I'd sat against the night before, was a single glove. Not a winter glove, not a work glove. It was one of those old, thin, off-white cotton gloves you see at gas stations or in janitor closets, brown at the fingertips like it had been dragged through mud. I didn't touch it. I didn't take it. I just stood there, staring, every hair on my neck standing on end. And then I heard it again, faint, from somewhere down the slope deep in the trees. Hey. I didn't eat breakfast, didn't boil water, didn't stretch or piss or look at the lake view I'd hiked 6 hours to see. I just crammed everything back into my pack like a panicked idiot, shoving cold, damp gear into dry bags with shaking hands. The glove was still sitting there, half curled, maybe 5 feet from where I'd slept, and I didn't touch it. I just kept catching myself glancing at it like it was gonna twitch or something. I don't know why. It looked dead, like something peeled off a mannequin and left as a message. That voice, the one from last night. I kept trying to convince myself I imagined it. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was a weird echo or wind carrying someone else's voice from the lake. But that last part, the part about seeing my tent, that was too specific, too close. I threw my pack on, tightened the straps, and got the hell out of there without even looking back. I skipped the trail down to the lake and took the long way back toward the main fork, moving fast, faster than I should have. I almost rolled my ankle twice on loose gravel, but I didn't care. I just wanted to put as much distance between me and that ridge as I could. I didn't realize how deep in I really was until I checked my map. No service, obviously. but the line back to the trailhead was just this thin little scratch across a sea of green. If I hiked hard, I could be back to the car by nightfall. Maybe, if nothing slowed me down. But something did. Around noon I saw smoke, thin, pale, curling up behind a cluster of dead trees maybe 100 yards off trail. I stopped dead in my tracks. Now I know what you're thinking. Smoke means people, right? Help, safety, campers. But something about it made my skin crawl. The smoke wasn't dark like from a fire pit. It was light, wispy, barely visible, like someone was trying not to be noticed. It didn't rise in a column either. It drifted low, sideways almost, like the fire was small and smothered. I stood there for a long time just watching it. I thought about going around, but that meant leaving the trail and bushwhacking for God knows how long. My gut said no, not worth it. So I kept going, slow, quiet. Every step felt like a coin toss. About 50 feet down, I started seeing weird shit. Little things. Things that didn't belong. A rusted metal spoon wedged into a tree stump. A torn strip of blue tarp hanging from a branch. A single sock, grey with holes in it, soaking wet in the dirt. Then I heard a voice. Not like the one from last night. Not a whisper. This was clearer, but still far away. Maybe 100 feet ahead, through the trees. I couldn't see the person. Just heard them. A man's voice. Deep. Talking slow. At first I thought he was on the phone or talking to someone, but the longer I listened, the more I realized. He was repeating the same thing over and over. You hear that? 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 Like a loop. Same rhythm, same pitch, same inflection. Again, and again, and again. I crouched, moving off the trail, half behind a boulder. My heart was in my throat. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't care about looking polite or respectful. I didn't want to say hi or ask for directions. I just wanted to be gone. You hear that? You hear that? You hear that? Then I heard a second voice, a woman's voice, quieter, muffled. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like she was crying. I didn't stay to figure it out. I bolted, backtracked 50 yards, cut into the woods and started moving parallel to the trail, fast. I used the map, compass and dumb luck to stay roughly on course. Branches slapped my face. Something tore a hole in my jacket. But I kept going. The forest got thicker, wetter, mushrooms everywhere, moss dangling off branches like cobwebs. I tripped more than once, fell on my knees, palms skinned raw, didn't stop. At some point, maybe an hour later, I finally collapsed near a fallen tree. I tried to catch my breath, tried to drink water, but my hands were shaking so bad I spilled half of it on my lap. And then I saw something that made my stomach flip. Another glove, same kind, thin, cotton, dirty and the fingertips. Sitting on the log next to me like it had been placed there. Fresh. No pine needles on it, no dirt around it. Like someone had just left it and walked away. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just froze. Then I heard it again, that same voice, somewhere behind me, deeper in the trees, not yelling, not rushing, just calling. Hey. It was closer this time, I didn't look back. I just got up and ran. Ran until my lungs burned and my calves screamed and I almost puked. And still, it followed. By late afternoon, I stopped thinking in words. Just instinct. Move. Hide. Listen. Move again. I don't even remember how far I ran. My GPS tracker was still in my pocket, but I was too afraid to look at it. I was afraid the red arrow would show me what I already knew, that I was no longer headed toward the trailhead. I'd gotten myself turned around. I was deeper in the trees now, further from people, safety, logic, everything back there. The smoke, the repeating voice, that woman crying, the gloves. None of it felt real. It felt like a trap, like something was baiting me or watching me scramble. It wasn't just that I was scared, it was that I felt mocked, like whoever was out there, they were enjoying this, taking their time. That thought is what broke me. I collapsed behind a tree, sucking in gulps of air, face pressed to the pine needle floor. I tried to convince myself I was paranoid, just having a panic attack, that maybe I'd stumbled on some weird backwoods squatters or illegal campsite, people on meth, or mushrooms, something. I kept trying to rationalize, but every time I did, something in the back of my mind would whisper, then why were they calling your name? Because they were. At some point during the running, the voice changed. It stopped saying hey and started saying Nathan, over and over. My name, soft, drawn out, almost sing-song. No one knew I was out here. I didn't post about the trip. I didn't tell my co-workers where I was going. I didn't even share the trail name with my mum, just Idaho. That's it. There's no way. No one should know. But they did. Nathan. That's when I realized something I hadn't before. It wasn't one voice. It was two. Same cadence, same words, same tone, but just slightly different. One deeper, one higher, one moving to my left, the other somewhere behind me. They were mimicking each other, practicing, like they were learning how to sound more like me, or more like someone I'd trust. I waited until dark to move again. I didn't want to, but I couldn't sleep, couldn't stay. Not after what I saw around dusk. I'd found this hollowed-out tree stump, big enough to sit inside. I crawled in and sat there shaking, trying to stay quiet, telling myself to wait until morning. I figured I'd use the inReach and call for help once I was sure whoever they were was gone. Then I saw the flashlight, a single beam, flickering through the trees maybe 40 yards away, sweeping left to right, right to left. It moved slowly, methodically, like someone was combing the forest, not looking for a lost hiker, not shouting hello or calling for help, just scanning. I stayed dead still, breathing through my mouth. The light passed once, twice, 3 times. Then it stopped, pointed directly at the stump. It didn't move for a solid 30 seconds. That was the worst part, those 30 seconds. Sitting there, frozen, feeling that flashlight beam aimed at where I was hiding. I couldn't see who was holding it. Just the pale cone of light through the trees, then click, off, gone. No retreating footsteps, No voice, just gone. I waited until the stars were out before I climbed out of the stump, and that's when I saw something new. The tent. Not mine, not even a recent model. This thing was old, canvas, torn, like the kind you'd see in army surplus stores, mildewed, half collapsed, nestled between two mossy boulders down in a little gully, and next to it was a fire pit, still warm, and a pile of gloves, all the same, cotton, dirty, folded in a neat little stack like laundry. Some had stains, some were burned at the fingertips, and above them, nailed into a tree with a rusted flathead nail, was a photo. It was me, not on this trip, not in the forest. It was an old photo. Looked like a screen grab from Instagram. Me and my ex in Seattle at the Pike Place Market. She had her arm around me and I was laughing at something. Someone had printed it, taped the edges, hung it on this tree like a goddamn shrine. I staggered back, nearly screamed, nearly threw up. I must have stood there for a full minute just staring at it. Then I heard something move. Fast, not a voice this time, not footsteps, running, coming straight at me. I didn't wait to see who it was. I turned and ran so hard I couldn't even breathe. I just moved, barely saw where I was going, tripped, slammed my shin into a root, didn't stop. At some point I lost my footing on a slope and slid. Tumbling, snapping through branches, smashing into the ground hard enough to see stars. My backpack slammed into my head and everything went dark for a few seconds. When I came to, everything was quiet again, but different this time. The forest didn't just sound empty, it felt wrong, like I'd crossed into a place that didn't get visitors. No trail here. Just thorns, wet moss, crickets buzzing somewhere far off. I tried to sit up. Pain exploded in my leg. I'd twisted my ankle, badly, maybe even broken it. I tried to scream for help, but my throat was raw. Barely a whisper came out. And then, somewhere close, way too close, I heard it again. But this time it wasn't a whisper or a taunt. It was a giggle, a dry, croaky, childlike giggle. And then a single word. Cold? Like they were asking me. I pissed myself, not a lot, just a leak. Just enough to feel it soak warm and then go cold against my thigh, while I sat there in the dirt, ankle twisted, listening to that voice giggle like a 5-year-old poking a dead animal with a stick. Cold? It came from maybe 10, 15 feet behind me, but I couldn't turn around. My body refused. Every part of me was screaming, "Don't look, don't look, don't thing look." I stayed completely still. Frozen, my mouth open, trying to breathe silent through the panic. My heart was doing something awful, not just pounding, but skipping, like it was twitching instead of beating. Then I heard it exhale, not through the nose, through the mouth, wet and close, like someone smiling way too wide, like they were enjoying the smell of me. I reached slowly, painfully slowly, for the knife I'd shoved into the side pocket of my pack earlier. But it wasn't there. That was the first time I felt a different kind of fear. Not fight or flight. Something worse. Something cold and sick that told me deep in my gut, they already took it. They were already that close. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been 5 minutes. The voice didn't say anything else. Didn't move. Just stood there, giggling once every minute or so. Sometimes wet. Sometimes dry. Like a glitch in the throat. Like it was trying on different ways to laugh. And then, finally, I heard it step backward. Crunch, crunch, slow. 1 foot at a time, retreating, back into the trees. I didn't look up until I couldn't hear it anymore. Even then, I didn't move for a long time. Not until my ankles started throbbing so bad it made my stomach twist. I checked it, swollen as hell, bruised, but I could still rotate it. Might have just been a bad sprain. Either way, I wasn't getting out fast. So I started crawling. I ditched the big pack. Took only what I needed: water, compass, the Garmin, and a couple energy bars. I made a makeshift splint using 2 sticks and a spare flannel. Strapped it tight. Every movement sent hot knives up my leg, but I kept going. On hands and knees, sometimes dragging, always listening. That's when I started noticing something wrong with the forest itself. I know how that sounds, but I swear to God it didn't feel the same anymore. The trees were different, tighter, thicker, growing at angles that made no sense, like they were leaning in. And everything smelled off. Not rot, not soil. It was like plastic that had been left too long in the sun. Fake, sour. I started seeing little things again. A child's shoe, half a peanut butter sandwich on a white paper plate, a half-buried Polaroid of an old man staring directly into the camera, eyes wide like he'd just seen something horrifying. None of it looked new. It was like this stretch of forest had been eating people for years and spitting out the scraps. By some miracle, or maybe something darker, I stumbled back onto a trail around dusk. I don't know if it was the trail, but it was a trail. It had boot prints, flattened dirt, moss pushed down by weight. I nearly cried when I saw it. I followed it, limping, leaning heavy on a branch I'd snapped off earlier. But around the 3rd mile, I knew I wasn't alone again. It wasn't a voice this time. It was clicking, just behind me, like someone tapping 2 rocks together, or clicking their tongue. Click, click, pause, click, click, click. I didn't look back, but every time I slowed down, the clicking got a little louder, a little faster, like it was excited. I tried to go faster, but I couldn't. My ankle gave out and I collapsed. I screamed this broken little noise, half rage, half despair, and then rolled onto my side, trying to find something, anything I could use to defend myself. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, on the edge of the trail, a tent, modern, clean, newer than mine, dark blue. Yeti cooler outside, flap zipped, smoke rising from a tiny fire pit. Someone was camping there, alive, human, normal. I limped so fast I almost collapsed again. I didn't care if I looked crazy. I was going to throw myself at whoever it was and beg them to hike me out. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. It was too clean. Too staged. The fire didn't smell like wood, and there were no sounds, no coughing, no zippers. No clinking pans or voices or music or rustling. Just the crackle of a fire that looked more like a flame screen than something real. Still, I got close, maybe 15 feet away. Called out hoarsely, "Hello? Anyone there? Please, I need help." Nothing. I limped closer. "I'm injured. There's someone following me, I think. Please." Still no answer. Then the tent flap slowly, and I mean painfully slowly, started to unzip. And something stepped out. I say something because I don't know what it was. Not exactly. It looked like a person. Same height, same body, wearing a flannel and dark jeans, but the way it moved, it was wrong, like its limbs weren't connected right. Joints bending just a bit too far, neck craned a little too far to the side, head cocked in a way that made my stomach clench. And the face. No, not a face. A mask. Of a face. Too smooth. No expression. Plastic like a CPR dummy. And over the mouth, stitched shut. With real thread. With blood on the edges. It started walking toward me, fast, too fast. I turned and ran, or limped or half staggered, back into the trees, screaming, sobbing. I didn't care if it followed. I just wanted to put distance between me and that thing. I don't remember much after that. It's a blur, pain, mud, trees. But eventually the trail split. One direction went down, sharp, fast descent. The other kept level. And there, scratched into a tree trunk at the split, not carved, just scratched, were two words, "Come back." And underneath it, a handprint, in blood. The blood wasn't fresh, that somehow made it worse. It had that dried rust look, dark and flaky around the edges, like it had been sitting there long enough to become part of the bark. But the handprint, it was detailed, not slapped, pressed, like someone stood there with their hand against that tree and let it sink in. Come back. The words were uneven, jagged, letters crooked and frantic, like someone was either shaking when they wrote it or smiling. I stood there for what felt like an hour, heart in my throat, ankle screaming. The trail to the right led downhill, that much I could tell, fast and sharp, carved into a ravine thick with brambles and dead trees. But the one on the left, it stayed level, easier terrain, but darker, covered, choked with pine and shadow, like it led straight into the throat of the forest. I had no idea which one was safer, or if either of them were. I just knew I couldn't stay still. I went downhill. My logic was simple. Down means toward water, roads, people, right? Trails are carved that way for a reason. Besides, I was too exhausted to fight elevation anymore. My leg felt like it was filling with fire every time I put pressure on it. I pushed forward, crunching through wet leaves and snapping through branches, trying to ignore how dead everything felt, like the trees were listening, like they knew what path I'd picked. And that's when I realized something else. The sounds had come back, but not normal ones, no birds, no animals, just these strange little clicks and pops in the distance, like someone was stepping on twigs deliberately, every few seconds, always behind me, sometimes to the side, sometimes just barely up ahead, like I was being herded. I tried using the Garmin. My fingers were shaking too much. I dropped it 3 times. Finally got it powered on. But the screen? Blank. No signal, no map, no SOS screen. Just a solid white screen glowing faintly in the dark like a dead fisheye. I shut it off. Useless. I remember sitting on a rock after that, just slumping there, body shaking, trying not to cry too loud. I felt stupid, weak. I started whispering to myself, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're gonna get out. This isn't real. You're okay." Then something whispered it back, from right behind me. "You're okay. You're okay. You're gonna get out." Almost like it was mocking me, same tone, same rhythm, like it had been listening the whole time, practicing. And that's when I cracked. I screamed, loud, raw, all the way from my gut. Not out of fear anymore, out of rage. "What the FK do you want?" My voice echoed through the trees. Nothing answered at first, just silence. Then a single sound, snap. Not a twig, a bone. I swear to God it sounded like a bone snapping, sharp and wet, like something smiled when it broke. That's when I smelled the smoke again. Thin, bitter, not firewood, something synthetic. I turned, scanning. Through the trees, maybe 30 feet away, was another tent, or what used to be a tent. It was in shreds, fabric torn and flapping, frame collapsed, scorched at the bottom like it had caught fire. And sitting inside, cross-legged like a goddamn child at story time, was a man, or what was left of one. He didn't move when I approached, didn't blink, just sat there, covered in soot and dried blood, like he'd been waiting. His face was gaunt, mouth open just a little, eyes cloudy and wide open. He had no shoes, no pack, just his arms folded over his lap like he was meditating, or like someone had posed him that way. But what made me freeze was his neck. There was a wire wrapped around it, thin, black, like guitar string, embedded so deep into the skin I could see bone in places. And around that wire, gloves, a chain of them, tied together, looped like a scarf, cinched tight. I stumbled backward, nearly slipped on wet leaves. That's when I saw the message written across the inside of the tent, scrawled in something red and glossy, "You're next, Nathan." That did it. I ran. I didn't care about my ankle. I didn't care what direction. I just ran. Branches whipped my face. My leg buckled twice, but I kept going. That's when I heard it again, but closer than ever. "Nathan." Not a whisper anymore. Not even a call. It was right in my fucking ear. I turned, swinging wildly with a broken stick I'd been carrying, and caught nothing but air. But I saw it, just for a split second. A figure, leaning out from behind a tree, same clothes as me, same hair, my face. But the mouth was wide open, too wide, like it was split at the cheeks. Black teeth, glistening, not moving, just grinning. Then it ducked back behind the tree, gone. I ran until my lungs gave out, until I collapsed and crawled, mouth foaming, vision spinning. And that's when I heard a new sound, engine, distant, like a car, maybe a dirt bike, muffled and choked by trees, but real, man-made. I scrambled up a slope, ignoring the pain, dragging myself with my hands. The engine sound got louder, then clearer, then I burst out of the trees and onto a gravel road. I could have cried. I might have. I don't even remember. But I stood there, swaying, bleeding, face covered in dirt, and stared at the road like it was a goddamn miracle. And then I saw it. A pickup truck, parked at the bottom of a bend. White, Oregon plates. The Tacoma. From the trailhead. I opened my mouth to yell, but someone was already standing beside it. A man, tall, grey hoodie, black pants. He had one foot on the running board like he was about to climb in, but instead he was just standing there, head tilted slightly, facing away from me. I opened my mouth again, tried to speak, but something in my gut pulled the words back, because in his other hand, he was holding something, a glove, and he was slowly pulling it over his fingers, one finger at a time. I didn't move. I couldn't. Not because my ankle was swollen to hell or because I was too exhausted to scream again, but because of the way that man was putting on the glove, like he was savoring it. Thumb, index, middle ring, pinky, tugging the wrist tight, flexing the fingers like he was testing a new skin. I ducked back behind the tree line, heart in my fucking throat, barely breathing. Gravel crunched under his boots. One step, then another. He was walking around the truck, casually, like he didn't have a goddamn hollowed-out forest full of missing hikers somewhere behind him. I kept peeking through the leaves, just enough to watch. He opened the passenger door, looked inside, then he stopped, stiffened. He turned fast, faced the trees, faced me. I ducked, sucking in a sharp breath, but not fast enough, because he called out, soft, calm, voice like syrup. You made it further than the others. I pressed my face to the dirt. I could feel it vibrating, my pulse pounding through the earth. Another few seconds passed. Then, "That's good, Nathan. That's really good." His voice wasn't rough or angry. It wasn't even threatening. It was disappointed. Like he was genuinely sad I'd made it this far. Like I'd ruined some kind of game. I heard the truck door slam. The engine didn't start. I waited, and waited, and waited. But nothing. When I finally looked again, the truck was gone. No tire marks, no dust cloud, just empty gravel and the wind rolling through the trees. I limped to the spot, sat down right where the Tacoma had been, opened my Garmin again, just out of habit, and this time the screen lit up. Full signal. I hit SOS. Then I laid there, staring up at the trees, waiting for a chopper or a ranger or someone to come pull me out of this goddamn nightmare. They found me 6 hours later, hypothermic, dehydrated, covered in bruises and rambling nonsense. They thought I'd fallen, got disoriented, maybe hit my head. Said people hallucinate all the time when they're lost in the woods. But here's the thing. When they helped me into the rescue truck, one of the rangers opened the door for me. Nice guy, bald, sunglasses, probably mid-50s. He reached out to steady me as I climbed in. I grabbed his hand, and I noticed something. He was wearing a cotton glove, off-white, dirty at the fingertips. I said nothing. I got out of Idaho the next day and never looked back. But sometimes at night, when I'm trying to sleep, I still hear it. Right outside my window, somewhere deep in the trees behind my building, that slow, careful voice, mimicking, repeating, calling my name, Nathan. And sometimes if I wait long enough, it giggles